I'm the Vice President of Sales with Clear Channel Outdoor here in Tucson. I want to welcome you all to our first of 3 2016 Tucson Advertising Discussions, or TAD for short. First off, I'd like to just say a quick thank you to our sponsors, Allegra Print, Williams & Associate, and Southwest Design Labs, who's responsible for all of our audio equipment, so thank you to you guys. Yeah, there you go. And quickly on that, I just want to take a moment to say thank you to them, because their sponsorship not only provides the audio equipment and the nice backdrop we have here, but also provides the funds that allow us to put this event on, and also provides the funds that cover the student tickets. And to that extent, if I could quickly get our student guests to stand up real quick. I'm sure we've got some of them in the room. All right. Yeah, go Wildcats. So one of the founding principles of the AAF Tucson, one of our core missions, is to provide scholarships, internships, and resources for our student population here in town, and help push them into successful careers in advertising. And it's the sponsorships that allow us to bring them to these events. And we also wanted to take a moment for all of you who are potential employers, it's our mission to keep local talent here local. And so if you would take some time after the event is over to get to know the students and introduce yourself, and any resources you might be able to provide, or mentorship, would be invaluable to them. So thank you for that. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce first Mr. Kyler Diggs, who is going to be our MC. Mr. Diggs is a meteorologist with KGUN 9 and has been a weather anchor for 20 years, I believe. Yeah, 20. Going on 20 years. Kyler and his wife, Maggie, are both natives of Colorado and have been here in Tucson on and off since 2003. And aside from keeping us aware of monsoons that may be coming in the next few months, Kyler also runs a small marketing firm. And our guest of honor, University of Athletic Director, Mr. Greg Byrne. Mr. Byrne served as the Wildcats Vice President of Athletics since 2010. In his tenure at the university, Mr. Byrne has overseen multiple hirings, including the head football coach, Rich Rodriguez. Greg has also overseen the expansion of the nearly $400 million Lowell Stevens football facility in the north end zone of Arizona Stadium. Mr. Byrne also has a flight that he's going to be rushing out of here to catch this evening, so I'm going to stop babbling and turn it over to Kyler. We're going to have half an hour of interview with Kyler and Mr. Byrne, and then we'll turn it over to the audience for a question and answer session. So thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you, Mr. Byrne, for being here.
Please call me Greg.
Yeah. Okay, we'll call you Greg.
That's my dad.
Okay. Yeah. And we realize you can probably hear us up here, but we're going to use the mics just because we are videotaping this, and then that way we can pick that up on the videotape a little bit better. So
we're on the record, huh?
We are.
Uh-oh.
We got to be careful.
Now I'm not going to say anything.
Oh, we got to be careful. But, well, we got a lot to cover here over the next 30 minutes, and obviously, when you are the athletic director of a major university, branding is one of the things that we got to think about. And of course, a lot of business owners are saying, well, how could I relate to a big university? How am I going to brand my business, even though it's like a mom and pop business? But there's a lot of similarities to it. What's your thoughts on branding of the U of A athletic department?
Well, there's principles no matter what you're doing as far as branding goes, and identity. Big part of it is you want to be recognized, period. And how do you go about doing that? And we have James Francis from our staff today, who's our Senior Associate AD, oversees everything externally for us, except for development, but ticketing, marketing, media relations, all the video stuff that you see us do. And then Ben Chulik from our marketing staff as well, and he's making the nuts and bolts and making making the sausage, so to speak. And we've got first thing we do is we have really good people in our department, and have about 175 employees, give or take a few. And it's so much of what we have to do is we do talk about branding, both for our department, for our university, for our student athletes, for our teams. And one of the things I believe in very strongly is you either control your message or somebody else is going to control your message for you. And so you've seen us be pretty aggressive with social media use, and the world is changing from a communication standpoint, and it's important for you as a business to be involved with that. So back to the branding part of it, your messaging is critical, your identity. Who are you? Are you attractive to people out there? One of our strengths as a university is our colors, red, white, and blue. Can't get any more American than that, right? And instead of the Wildcats, maybe we should have been the Apple Pies. But we're proud to be the Wildcats. But one of the things for us as well, from an identity standpoint, we're not only trying to brand ourselves on the local stage here in Tucson, but within the state of Arizona, we're also trying to brand ourselves nationally. One of the things that I believe in strongly, and that we've adopted a bit more, I think, with my influence, I think James and Ben would say that, there's lots of Wildcats out there, and we're proud to be the Wildcats. So please don't walk out of here saying, oh boy, they don't want to be the Wildcats. We're proud to be the Wildcats. Name some other schools that are also the Wildcats. Villanova just won a basketball game the other day, I think. Northwestern, Kentucky, Kansas State. There's others. They're the Wildcats. So there's a bunch of those. It would have been one thing if we would have been called the Cactuses or something like that. That would have been a pretty easy identity. So what we've done, and you see our focus on, is we are always going to be the Arizona Wildcats. We're very proud to be the Arizona Wildcats. But that Block A is what we put out there a lot. You've seen the consistency from us as a department, whether it's the 50-yard line at Arizona Stadium, and you notice in both end zones it says Arizona. We did that on purpose because if they're watching Sports Center highlights, or we're showing off the games on ESPN or Fox or Pac-12 networks, they're going to see, watching that game, they're going to see the Block A and they're going to see Arizona. So it connects the two. If it just would have been Wildcats, not sure about that. One of the things, like I'm going to Phoenix tonight and taking a red eye to Atlanta, then up to Indianapolis tomorrow morning for a meeting. But when I go through the Atlanta airport, right there, that A, sometimes people get it confused with Auburn. All right? But what's happened is we've been more consistent with that, with the Block A. I've noticed just personally, just traveling, a lot more identity with our university, with our program, with our community. And so from a principal standpoint, you absolutely have to find your identity. You have to stick with your identity and have it be something, not to say you don't change and adjust at times from here to there, but you have to be very consistent with putting your messaging out there and of your brand and who you are.
Yeah, I think that consistency is vitally important, and because it's repetition over and over and over, and we've seen lots of corporations do that. Disney is the master at
Wonderful.
that. Yeah,
Nike.
with their mouse ears. Yeah.
The swoosh. I mean, back when a lot of us were kids, they had the swoosh with the Nike on top. Well, that brand got so strong, that swoosh, they don't even need that anymore. And that's worldwide known. There's not a stronger brand and identity, certainly in the athletic world, than Nike, but I would say they're one of the tops in the world.
Sure, and you mentioned that branding is important nationally, too. It comes into play when you're trying to recruit good coaches and good athletes in here, too, doesn't it?
It does, and you have to, for lack of better terms, you kind of want to have some sexiness about you. You want to be somebody at an organization that people are attracted to for whatever reason it is, and so what you put out there, how you're representing yourself, is going to have a lot to do with the ability to successfully get people engaged with your organization. And for us, it's a few things. Obviously, we're part of the university, first and foremost, but we want to engage the community to get people to our events. We want to engage 16, 17, and 18-year-olds to come and attend the University of Arizona, both as student athletes and as general students as well. And our brand and our identity is just a key component of that. For us, we don't have the numbers this year, but last year, James and Ben and Jeremy Sharp few other folks put together the numbers for us. Just on football and men's basketball alone, we had 60 million people watch our games. You can't buy that type of advertising, that type of brand recognition. And so that's why it's so important when you're having 60 million people watch our university, our community. We better put our best foot forward and have a chance to hopefully be very competitive. And people love a winner. They want to be a part of that. And people also want to be proud in the manner that you do it. But it's important that we take advantage of that for our community and for our university.
Yeah, that kind of brings us into the Pac-12 network and your association with them. That's obviously a lot of exposure, and kind of explain how that branding and marketing intertwines with the Pac-12 network.
James is smiling. James, why are you smiling? This answer, yes. Well, I'm on the record, right? The Pac-12 networks is a valuable asset. And it is something that has increased the exposure for our universities and a lot of our Olympic sports. For instance, our softball program, Mike Andrea, 8 national championships. I think we're on ESPN Saturday, but I think we're on the Pac-12 Network Sunday and Monday. So there's our softball program. Our recruits, softball fans across the country who are able to get that have been able to have our teams compete on a stage they haven't been able to compete before, which is good exposure to the Pac-12, Pac-10 before it, Pac-8 before that, has had great history of winning national championships. And the way people watch television, it was interesting. Yesterday the last 2 days I was in Los Angeles, and I did a panel. I was the moderator, so Kyle, I've been in your shoes yesterday, and I had a guy named Donald Yee, who's Tom Brady's agent, who recently wrote a Washington Post editorial about how the NCAA should be blown up. So he was right next to me. And then the person on the other side was Colin Cowherd. If you're a sports fan, you probably know who Colin is. And he was with ESPN for a long time, and now he's with Fox. But the session right before that was a gentleman who's one of the owners of the Golden State Warriors, and this guy who's into, not 3D, but virtual reality, thank you, VR. And they actually had the glasses, and they had this little virtual reality show that they were doing, and you're literally sitting there, you put the glasses on, you're sitting there at mid-court at the Golden State Warriors game, watching Steph Curry, watching Steve coach the team, all those different things. And then they went to a boxing ring, and you're sitting right at the corner of the ring. And I hadn't seen it like that. I'd seen 3D television, but I hadn't seen the virtual reality to that level. And I'm like, I walked out of there thinking, our world has changed because of television. And they're talking about that you have this a mask on, basically. But they're talking about not so distant future. You're going to be able to use basically sunglasses and have a little earpiece in, and you're going to be able to socialize with people around you, and even have virtual reality boxes that you could sell. That right here in Reformer, this room could be turned into a virtual reality box, and all of us, as our closest friends here, we could be sitting here watching the game together. If we aren't thinking about that and the impact that's going to have on what we're doing, James and I, he's part of our executive team, we talk about a lot of things. We have to talk about that, because as we're planning and you're seeing stuff with Arizona Stadium and McHale and all the different things, this thing could look a lot differently not too far from now. And what they're talking about from the capital investment in it to make it happen is not extreme. So it's going to be a very interesting thing going forward. What was the question? I just went off on a tangent.
No,
I'm good at doing that. James
great.
and Ben know that.
You're great, but that gets into technology.
Oh, Pac-12 networks.
Yeah, Pac-12 network. And what about DirecTV? I'm actually a subscriber, and I'm
You should
upset
switch.
Yeah, I know.
That's what the Byrne family did, although we just did the flip. And so when you sit in the AD meetings, there's a lot of stuff thrown at you. I'm trying to pay attention, make sure I'm focused on what's going on. They talked to us about the flip 6 months ago or so. I didn't quite understand the flip until I was home one night, and we have Dish. And I was home one night, and I wanted to watch our gymnastics team compete against Cal. And I sit down. I had a night at home. I was excited, and I told Regina, my wife, I said, we're going to watch gymnastics tonight, which is exactly what she wants to do when she's with her husband. Which, actually, she likes gymnastics, so that's a good thing. So we're sitting there, and Oregon State and Washington come on. I'm like, so I'm like, and I look at the deal and it says, oh, Oregon State and Washington. I said, okay, that's not right. I went to ArizonaWildcats.com. Yep, I wasn't confused. We're competing against Cal that night in gymnastics. And so then I got out my laptop, signed on to the Dish Everywhere, went to it, and all I could get was Oregon State, Washington. So the flip was to where they're trying to get the Dish networks to carry all the Pac-12 Arizona, Oregon, all the other ones, and also the national network, and so they're blocking some of the feeds. And that's a challenge. But I understand the strategy in it, and at the same time, too, I think we as universities have tried to do our best to be out there and say just switch, and people switched in good faith. So it's I hope in time we're going to be able to have this be successful to where we can get the distribution that we need for it.
Well, okay, so then you think, all right, there's other avenues for broadcasting. The NFL just recently announced they're going to use Twitter on their Thursday night games. So any discussion of that over at the Pac-12?
Not that we know of. I know Larry Scott is constantly working on different ideas, and I know there's we're over in China with Alibaba and some things like that, and I hope in time that's something we can monetize in what we're doing. But I think the goal for us as a conference is to be creative and to be the first ones out there. But there's still some hurdles we have to cross.
Sure. So you've got business owners here that are thinking, well, that's great, TV's great, but there is no way I can afford that. But there's obviously a lot of avenues to market your business. You've got the social media is just incredible. How much weight do you guys really put on social media?
A truckload.
Yeah.
It is. Think about the fact, I spoke in a class all the times throughout the university, and I'll ask the class, I'll say, are you guys on Facebook? And normally it's not always the case, but normally it's about 50% are on Facebook when they're college age kids. How many of you are on Twitter? Usually about 3/4. How many of you are on Instagram and Snapchat? And they all are. What I tell them is I say, look at the person next to you. All right, do that. Look at the person next to you. They're your competition, right? Twitter was the mechanism that the government or the rebel groups in Egypt and Libya used to overthrow their government. That's powerful. And so when I hear somebody, I don't know how long ago, James, remember that guy that came in to interview for one of our marketing jobs? I'm not going to use his name, but I remember he came in. I don't even remember his name, so it's okay. Okay, James remembers. He came into my office, and I kind of peppered him a little bit with, hey, tell me how you use Twitter. Well, I don't really use it. I'm like, are you serious? If you read any article about me at all in our department or anything like that, they're going to usually say something about Twitter a lot of times. And if you aren't using it, your competition is. And people will say to me, well, I don't have anything interesting to tweet. I get it, I've got a couple people that follow me on Twitter. I get a lot more out of what I read on Twitter than what I deliver. And I think I try to, I have on my Twitter page, I have Twitter goals, communicate, engage, and have some fun. Try to show I do have a bit of a sense of humor. And it's been such an amazing tool to literally connect with people all over the world. And they'll say, well, I don't have anything interesting to say. Give T-shirts away. All right, go down to the bookstore, buy a bunch of U of A T-shirts and give them away, because when I do that on my Twitter account, you think I'm giving away gold bars. We had a flag company, which I thought was great marketing, and they gave me a choice of like 3 or 4 flags to choose from. Am I getting that right, Ben? Yeah. And I picked the one that kind of looked like the Arizona flag, and so I gave those away on Twitter, and the bookstore sold out of them. Like within a couple days, they were gone. And so it's such a mechanism to get your message out and what you're doing. Now, I'm weak on, I don't have an Instagram or a Snapchat account, but I do know we're doing that as a department, and we're engaging with recruits, we're engaging with our fan base, we're engaging with our students. And so to me, is anybody here from the Daily Star? Okay. I'm not, and you don't need, I'm not going to ask you to say it. I don't know what your distribution is now, But I know from a social media standpoint, you guys are ahead of the curve from what you're doing, Tucson.com, and I think it's a great thing. And one area you're not cutting, and when cuts are ever made, is sports writing. Because we know if you go to Tucson.com and you look at the most read articles, the trending articles, we're usually pretty strong in there as far as those numbers. And so as a good business, they're saying, well, we need to make sure we're investing in that. What's happening now, though, as the media market is changing, if you aren't paying attention to how the public is engaging, and I think Tucson.com is being very creative with that, you're going to get passed by. And so we do a Wildcat Wednesday email with Greg Byrne. It's got my name on it. How many of you get it? Okay, about half the room. It's out to 185,000 unique email addresses. And we started with 80,000 the first week. First week we sent it out. We had Washington State fans, for instance, who bought tickets from us. They said, I don't want to see that. So we're down to like 40 or 50,000. We built it up to 185,000, and that with no advertising, just word of mouth. And it's been a very successful tool for us. And actually, we made some changes in it just in the last few weeks because our click rate was going down. So what we did, we shortened it and make sure some of them, there's a lot of data, a lot of information we try to get out there, but we had to be more concise with it to get people to read it. And at the end of the day, from a branding standpoint, what are you doing to control your message, get your message out there, get people engaged with what you're doing? And there's a lot of mediums to do it, but social media is critical.
Well, and love it or not, it keeps you relevant. And you were talking about consistency, and it definitely keeps you out there on a consistent basis, and that branding, it comes right back around to it. So, and we're talking about millennials, and they're also being known as the cordless generation. How do you move forward knowing that there's a lot of these younger people growing up that just don't want to have anything to do with a traditional TV broadcast?
I think in our world right now, that has got more people's attention than almost anything else. The Big Ten started leaking yesterday or 2 days ago what their new television deal is going to be with, and they're transitioning from ESPN to Fox, and Fox is still willing to pay a very high number. I had to apologize to Kyler because I don't watch the news a whole lot, so I wasn't sure of the connection. I was like, hey, so where are you from? How long you been here? What do you do? So I put open mouth, insert foot. But it's just the traditional media is changing, and I do think how you get that out there, the Tucsons.com is going to be, I still think is still very important. I think local advertising buys are still very important. But I also think if you try to stand on that alone, you're in deep trouble. It's got to be much more aggressive. I still like billboards a lot. I think, there you go. Mike? Yeah, that's right here, 20 bucks he promised me right here, yeah. Why do I like billboards? Because you're going to see them. Now, I struggle with the digital, the rotating ones, because like when I'm driving into Phoenix and they got 100 of those in Chandler, I don't even look unless I'm stuck in traffic, because one, I don't feel safe doing that, paying attention to see what's next on the board. But secondly, the static boards, and I'm biased in this, and James and I have had good discussions about this. One of the best things we've done is the Welcome to Arizona. This is Wildcat country. You guys know, see, there's heads that are nodding. And Nogales, that's right. How do you say it? Do you speak Spanish? How does our board read? I can't remember. I passed it the other day. Bienvenido. Yeah, okay. So it's kind of working. Like, we got some work to do there. But you knew what it meant. Yeah, you knew what it meant. And that's and for us from a branding standpoint, our strategy in doing that was saying we want people to come into the state of Arizona and understand that the U of A is a big deal. And we understand, we hope they're thinking about academics just as much as they're thinking about athletics. And that has, again, been consistent over a number of years. And Mike and I were just talking, the one down by the airport when I came in last night is getting faded. We need to probably update that one. But at the same time, too, that's been a very successful media buy for us from a consistency standpoint, getting people thinking about it, getting people wearing the colors and doing all the things we're asking people to do. And part of the biggest deal in branding and who you are is getting people to connect and understand that they have value, not only for what we don't see you as just consumers for us. We see you as marketers for us. You're our best marketers. And so on Fridays, do any of you, Any of you not know that we want you to wear the colors on Friday? I'm serious. How many of you do not know that? Raise your hand, please. Okay, a few of you? Okay, we'll talk afterwards. We'll set you straight. Okay. Oh, you went to Colorado, though. We want you to wear the colors because think about it, and sometimes it doesn't connect. We'll say, we have all of our recruits come in on Fridays. A lot of them do. We have a lot of general students who are going to come do their campus tours on Fridays. And we know when they go to Tempe and Phoenix, it's just, no offense to them, it's just the university is one of many things in the community. Same thing in the LA area, in the Bay Area, and Seattle. How do you separate yourself from your competition? Each of you in this room can help us with that. Does that make sense? And so if we're all united and doing that together, man, we have weaknesses. There's no doubt about we have weaknesses, but we've got a lot of strengths. And let's make sure we're not beating ourselves up too bad over our weaknesses. It's kind of like even though we're the Wildcats, it's like being a duck, stay calm on top and paddle like hell underneath. And so it's important that we may be paddling like hell underneath on a few things, but there's also some really great things about Tucson, Arizona, and the U of A, and let's make sure we're doing everything we can to highlight those things.
Yeah, and that brings up a point.
By the way, I like your tie.
What?
Yeah,
well,
that's right.
I had
Yeah.
to. But that brings up a point. You got some pretty stiff competition out there when it comes to trying to recruit against UCLA, USC, some of these places. What's your take on that?
How do you separate yourself? And so our strategy is to offer things and do things, all legal, within the NCAA rulebook, that what can the experience be here at U of A that's different? I spoke in a class last year, and I had TJ McConnell and Brandon Ashley from our basketball team in the class. And they were talking about, somebody asked about student athletes getting paid. I said, well, first of all, let's talk about what we are spending on them and what it would cost for them. And we average for our 500 student athletes, including walk-ons, and not $1 in salaries, no salaries. We average $82,000 per student athlete per year we spend on their experience. If you're on one of our teams that charter, football, men's basketball, women's basketball charters, the range can be anywhere from $140,000 per student athlete to $200,000. Those are real dollars. So I asked TJ, who transferred here from Duquesne, a little small school back in Pittsburgh. How do you say it, James? That's right. You think it's kind of right? That's a little inside joke on our part. And so he came here from Duquesne, and I said, TJ, in front of the class, I said, and they both knew me. They had been around me for several years now. And I said, guys, if you disagree with me, tell me, please, okay? I mean that. I said, but TJ, when you were at Duquesne, how'd you get around to your games? And he said, by bus. I said, how long did it take you on some of those bus trips? What were some of the longer ones? He said, 10 to 12 hours. I said, do you like it a little better when you're at Arizona and you practice in McHale and you come out from your practice after you showered and you get on the bus and you got a bag of food waiting for you and you go down to the airport and you get on the plane and don't go, actually they'll do security some on us, but you get on your chartered jet and you go to Oregon for the weekend games. Is that a better experience than riding the bus? I said, well, yeah, of course. I said, Brandon, being on ESPN, being on Fox, having the opportunity to compete for a national championship, having the opportunity to have a 14,500 in McHale every night, is that a good experience for you? Is there value there? He said, yeah, there is. I said, that doesn't mean we can't continue to do better with what we're doing. And one of the things with the student athletes, and I feel, be direct with them, be honest. One of the best pieces of advice I ever got in my life, I was in 7th grade and I told a lie. All right, not what was it, George Washington or Abe Lincoln? George Washington. And it's kind of like it was my George Washington moment. My mom said to me, and I was caught red-handed, whatever, I can't even remember what I did. And my mom said to me, she said, son, you're not smart enough to remember your lies. Make sure you tell the truth. Okay? Great advice. Yeah. And I've tried to live by that, and I've tried to instill that in Regina and I's boys. And it's amazing for what we're doing and the competition we're competing against. I pride ourselves in when you get information from us, like we knew 9 months ago this was coming, but our APR numbers yesterday, single year APR, not multi-year, there's a big difference. We had a rough year with a couple kids in your highest profile sports in football, basketball. We had a great 5-6 year record in a row, but last year wasn't as good. We're on track to do very well this year as well, back to where it's supposed to be. But you know what we did? We said we did it. This is ours. We owned it, and we looked at ourselves in the mirror and said, what can we do to get better? The students back there, you know, when you see controversy that happens in the world, most of the time when people make mistakes and screw up, if on the front end they just said, I did it, my fault, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have done it. Most of the time, not all the time, most of the time they can survive that. What happens and where the big issues come is when they lift the rug up and they try to sweep it underneath it. And they try to cover it up. And how often, and we've seen it a lot in our industry, where coaches, where programs, where people have lifted up that rug and swept it, and that's when the big issues came. Because people don't have a lot of mercy, don't have a lot of grace when it comes to people covering stuff up. And so, again, 2 life lessons for today, students. Tell the truth and make sure you admit when you screw up. And that's hard for us to do. You got to swallow your pride. Tough thing to do. So we're going to be honest. We're going to separate ourselves from the competition. We're going to communicate and engage as much as we can.
Yeah, and be relevant. And we want to leave time for you all to ask some questions. But real quick, I want to give you an opportunity to, you got to keep marketing fresh, too. And you guys just introduced a new marketing plan this week. Tell us just a little bit about that.
Right. Well, there's a song out there called Our House, and Welcome to Our House. And Ben and James and we've got a really creative group, and we haven't met for a little bit. We have our ACT team, our Arizona creative team, and we just go into our conference room and throw crazy stuff up against the wall and see what will stick. And 90% of it we'll never use, but some of it we will. We'll see what we can do with it. So normally we have done our season ticket campaign for football in July, August timeframes, where we've done our media buys and everything. We've decided to move it up. And we've just announced it. Coach Rodriguez and I met with the press this week on Monday and had a lot of our sponsors there and partners there and introduced Our House. And it's a really creative design of what's taken place. And we've been able to, I think, get a lot of attention, not only locally but nationally, for our football program. How many of you, I'm going to ask you a question. How many of you like Arizona football? Okay? Keep your hands up, please. Okay? How many of you go to the games on a fairly regular basis? A couple games a year? Okay. How many of you who are fans, how many of you never go to the games? I'm not going to get after you too bad, just a little bit. How many of you never go to the games that are fans, that are better fans of Arizona football? You? Okay, we got to talk afterwards, okay? That's good. And so I'm gonna, and I promise you I'm doing it in good nature, but I'm gonna have a little bit of fun, okay? We go out to the tailgates, and you know, for those of you that know me, I like talking to people, I like engaging, and so on game days, I'll go out to the tailgates, and I'll walk around, and I ask them, how many of you are going to the games? Well, thinking about it. God, you're thinking about it? Let me tell you something. We don't have these big tailgates and have all the security and cleanup and all the setup and all the staffing and everything that we do so you can come down here, drink a couple beers, and go home. We want you to walk down Cherry and go in the stadium. And sometimes when you say it to them, they're like, really? I haven't thought about that. And part of the thing back in marketing and branding, you have to be direct. People, when we put stuff out sometimes that we try to get people to read between the lines, and this is no offense to anybody, they just struggle getting people to read between the lines. And so sometimes you got to kind of hit them between the nose or the eyes and say, this is what the expectation is. And when you're talking about Arizona football, and I told you how many people are watching, and guys, I really believe this thoroughly, and I'm looking at it red and blue glasses, I understand. I think we are set up from a coaching standpoint to have as good a coaching staff across the board for all of our sports than we've had in the history of our program. Jeremy Foley, the AD at Florida, is one of my close guy I really admire. I call him on when I'm making big decisions. He was with me yesterday in L.A. If Jeremy called me tomorrow and said, Greg, let's change coaching staffs for all of our sports at Florida, no thanks, not interested. If Gene Smith, the AD at Ohio State, called tomorrow and said, let's switch, I wouldn't do it. I love who we have. I love who we have coaching. But I also know that one of the key, our basketball support's off the charts, our softball support's off the charts, our baseball support's really good. And so we have a passionate fan base. Well, one of the things that's been a disconnect, and to be honest, from a branding and marketing standpoint, these guys have put in a tremendous amount of time trying to crack that nut. But one of the things I think that is critical for us to take the next step is for our community, and a lot of them are already there. So for those of you who are there, thank you. We really appreciate it, and I mean that sincerely. But for the ones who are on the fence, we want them to have some ownership and feeling how are we going to be successful. Them being at the games makes us successful. That separates us from our competition. And I know we've got some issues to address with our concessions, our restrooms, every place but the north end zone. And that's why you've seen us come out and talk about a student fee, because we have a $150 million issue to address. And our fundraisers and our operations team and our marketing team and everybody's done a great job of building up our infrastructure, but we still got a long way to go. And so you're going to see that. But even though the restrooms need to get a little better, we still need you there on Saturday. It's only 6 or 7 times a year, and it's a difference maker for our community. And lastly, I think we're worth investing in. I really do. And I think the great majority of our community does too. So I'm asking you, we see you as people that are our best marketers, go out and spread that gospel. All right, go out and it's going to, like I'm a preacher here, but go out and tell the good news, And that's something that we really think that can be a difference maker for us moving forward.
All right, Greg, thanks. I'm going to hand this mic over to Mike so that you can ask some questions.
Thank you, Kyler. Thank you, Mr. Byrne. So, questions? All right, we're going to start right here with Andy.
Okay, so you talked about putting that A out there, the Arizona brand, so you've got a lot of image. What is the balance between how you put out your image brand, like the Nike swoosh, and more niche marketing, where you have to put out specific messages for your sub-brands, swimming, gymnastics, football, and how much thought and increased time do you now have to put in to the image as opposed to the more specific, direct, like you said, hit them between the eyes,
Right.
Come out to the swim meet, come out to the gymnastics meet. So how do you divide your time, and what's your marketing strategy when it comes to niche marketing as opposed to the image marketing?
I'm going to talk at the 30,000-foot level, and if James or Ben want to jump in on what I'm missing, is fine. The most important one is the overall brand of your department, your business, and which is the Block A, which is Arizona, which is the Wildcats. And as like talked about, with what we put out in front, we're thinking much more on the national scale than we are on the local scale, because people know in town we're the Arizona Wildcats. We don't have to let people know that. But within there, once your national and your big brand and identity gets identified and recognized, then you have the opportunity to come in from a niche standpoint. For us, you don't see any basketball ads from us, do you? Because we've got a product that we don't take for granted, but from an advertising standpoint, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to it. But we've got 15,000 plus season tickets that we could still sell for football. Makes a big difference on our bottom line, so we spend a lot of our time and energy there. However, we have 18 other sports, and all 18 of them want attention for their program and their identity. And so every year, we have our budgeting meetings, and we talk about our priorities. One of the things we did this past year was we hired a new gymnastics coach, Tabitha Yim from Stanford. And we felt we had an upside, and we put some more resources into doing that, because we felt, again, getting people connected with our university, our athletics department, you could get a lot of elementary, middle school, high school, especially girls, tied to our department that maybe weren't before, and they bring their families out. We had gymnastics meets this year, about 4,000 people, and by far blew the doors off of what we'd done before. And I told Tabitha when we hired her, I think because of the support our community gives to our entire department, I think we can have 8,000 people at gymnastics on a pretty regular basis. It's a great sport. It's awesome. And so we try to do some niche advertising as much as we can. There are some sports I wish we could do a lot more, but we've decided we have so many dollars we can spend on it, and we have to decide what direction we want to go. And some years it looks a little different than others based off where your priorities are from an identification and a branding standpoint each year. Softball, we don't do a lot. We got a really consistent fan base. And baseball, our first year we moved out to High Corbett, put a lot more resources into it that year. That's paid off for us. And so again, there's strategy that these guys are in the weeds on, and a lot more than I am. But they're great. I trust them, but their strategy each year on what we're doing based off of what you're trying to accomplish. Is that fair?
Greg, I'd only add that maybe more detail on the niches that RPD to support the recruiting efforts. So in swimming, you might not see advertising, but we put a lot of time and effort into helping them recruit.
Are you finished there?
Yeah, I'm done.
All right. He said also to paying attention to the recruiting side, which is absolutely right.
Okay, we're back here.
The football program
Yes, sir.
had a tremendous success in Southern California this year. And so I've got two questions. Number one, will the elimination of satellite camps hurt your efforts in regions that are rich in talent? And number two, what is the biggest drawback that young people 18 to 20 see about Tucson? What's the biggest negative they see about Tucson?
So let me answer the first one or the second one first. I think from an 18 to 22-year-old perspective, Tucson's pretty attractive. The bigger issue is the 23 to 40-year-old perspective from a business standpoint. And I think, like Rich Rod says and Sean says, and a lot of our coaches say, if we can get a kid to visit, our batting average of getting somebody to stay is really good. Because again, if you separate yourself from your competition, which our passion is one of our biggest separators. So now if somebody wants to be in the mountains with a bunch of trees and some skiing and things like that, well, maybe not the place for them. But if they like wearing shorts and flip-flops to class, half the year, pretty good place for them. And our campus, Sean will say, he said, our campus is alive. Which, as the athletic director, I go to bed on Friday and Saturday night saying, I hope it's not too alive. But so our outlook on there is pretty good. And we've got some different ideas up our sleeve down the road, I think, that can even help more in the branding and identity of that. From a satellite camp standpoint, the last 24 hours have been interesting because there's been some comments made by some people in leadership positions that, and I'm not going to say anything more than that. You can go figure it out pretty quickly. I was surprised those comments were made because this is things. So what happened was for the Southeastern Conference was against these satellite camps because Jim Harbaugh at Michigan was the leader in it. He was coming down into Southern Territory, Florida, and they were setting up camps to help in recruiting. And so Rich and our staff, they've been going to Hawaii, they've been going to California, Phoenix, and working some different camps to get exposed to recruits. Well, that's been shut down now. And what's going to happen, though, is Oliver Luck, who's Andrew Luck's dad, who's the executive vice president of the NCAA, he already said this week, listen, this is going to get readdressed. And what happens sometimes is there was this initial decision made, and just like anything else, there was such an overreaction to it that everybody started kind of freaking out about it. And in reality, I think we'll find a common ground that we can land on, and I believe that we'll be able to go out and do some of those camps. So I think we're going to be fine in time. The most important thing we can still do at the end of the day is get kids to visit our campus, and then our close rate's really good.
So I want to be respectful of Mr. Byrne's time because I know you got to leave. So I'm going to do a wrap up real quick, and then we'll push it back out for one last question. And I would love it if one of our students has a question. I think that would be.
Let's see who's going to lead.
That would be helpful.
A lot of pressure.
Real quick before we get to that, we'll just do a quick wrap here. So I just want to say thank you again to Kyler. Thank you, Mr. Byrne. We really appreciate your time. We went ahead and got you each a nice gift from the AAF Tucson.
Thank you very much.
There's an extra $100 in yours for the billboard comment, so thank you very much. And we can also help you with branding in LA. If you don't have the satellite camps, we'll get you a billboard in LA, no problem. So any of our students, questions? All right, we got one back here.
What's your name? Yeah, wait for the mic. What's your
Here we
name? Isandra?
I'm Lisandra Gomez.
Okay.
President of the American Advertising Federation.
And tell me, where are you in school?
I'm graduating this year in May.
From, I'm sorry.
Eller College of Management.
Eller College of Management, thank you.
Yes.
And I hate to say it, it's a blessing for you. It's at some point you struggle when you get to be our age. Are you high school or college or okay? Got it. So Eller, great.
Yes.
That's what I would have guessed, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So kind of going off that, and I know you spoke about, DirecTV and ESPN, and them playing a large role in the advertising aspect of UA athletic sports. From my perception and my knowledge, especially my father in that demographic, he's, like, oh, we got to keep TV, we got to have ESPN. What are your incentives and goals to try to persuade ESPN to maybe engage the younger demographic, such as millennials?
That's a good question that I think you'd probably be able to answer better than I could. We see the social media side being much more valuable in our interactions with you, and so ESPN right now they're very concerned about what they can do. So if you have suggestions for them, you need to let them know. I'm serious. There has never been a time in our country where the general public has had more influence on what takes place. It used to be where we go vote, somebody write a letter to the editor and show up in the paper on Sunday. It's instantaneous now. And you're required, there are things that pop up for us on a daily basis that spreads like wildfire across the country. And so when something happens that's newsworthy, that gets attention, it could have come out within a minute, and I'll get a message from the East Coast or the South or the Northwest. And that's the world we're in. And so trying to get a grasp of where that's headed, there's a lot of people guessing right now. And there's a lot of people that are going to be right, and there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be wrong. And so if you as a business, as an organization, aren't paying attention to what they're saying and what their trends are and what they're paying attention to, we've got some issues ahead of us, and we're going to get left behind. And so part of it for us, we're very fortunate, for instance, Zona Zoo. I don't know how many of you are Zona Zoo members. You guys, we have as good a student support as almost anybody in the country. But we face one of the biggest issues that everybody else faces, getting you to stay in the game. And back to marketing, did Ben leave? Eddie's outside? Oh, okay. Ben Schulich, who works with Zona Zoo and us, and so I do my thinking a lot of times when I'm on the Stairmaster in the morning, and I was thinking, we got to get the students to stay. What can we do? And creative ideas. And I'm on the Stairmaster, and I'm thinking, all right, the kids in the front row, they stay. They're there. It's everybody behind them that we're concerned about. So the reality is, everybody, what are you looking at the person in front of you? You're looking at the back of their shirt. So back to direct advertising and direct messaging, we put on the back of the Zona Zoo shirts that said, Zona Zoo stays the entire game. All right? Real direct. And the first couple messages we put together on it, we're kind of reading between the lines and all that. And it's like, no, we got to tell them directly. Has it helped? Yeah. Has it solved the problem? No, it hasn't. But we're fortunate that we have our students engaged, but the biggest issue for us now is when you leave, keeping you engaged, because back to the gentleman's question earlier, our biggest issue, I believe, is the 23-year-old plus and getting them to come back to Tucson. And every time I speak at Eller in the entrepreneurial classes, I say, stay here in Tucson, start it up. I was 13 years old when I met Phil Knight for the first time, when my dad was AD at Oregon and Phil was building his little sneaker company up in Beaverton. And who knows, why can't Tucson have whatever the next Nike is? Think about the impact that would have on our community long term. That'd be incredible. And I think we're part of the solution to help have it be things for people to do that are attractive, that young people want to be a part of. People like sports. That's gone on for generation after generation, and we think it's still continuing, but how they're taking it all in is changing, and that's why, for instance, for Arizona Stadium especially, we're going to have to figure out the Wi-Fi. We're going to have to figure out the charging stations, the whole experience, to make sure there's as few excuses as possible for fans not to come to the game. Last thing is an encouragement to all of you. One of the things I fall far short on, I got plenty of weaknesses, okay, and I mean that sincerely. When we're doing well, I get a lot of pats on the back, way more than I deserve. You know why we do well? Because Ben's already left, but we got Ben Schulich, we got James Francis, we got great people in our department. And I just want to encourage you as leaders in your organizations, as business owners, wherever you can, there's a book I love that that I try to read at least once a year that I've asked our department to read called How Full Is Your Bucket? It's about that thick. It's pretty easy reading. And every interaction you have with somebody, you're either filling somebody's bucket or emptying somebody's bucket. There's no maintaining. And it's amazing how contagious that is. And there's some days, I just apologized to our executive team the other day. I think I've been too negative lately. My fault. You know? And it's okay for you to admit that you're not doing something right. And my wife gave me a kick in the pants the other day about it, which I needed. And so it's important that you take the time to thank the people who are doing things for you to make you successful in what you're doing. And that's your family, that's your friends, that's the people that you work with. And you know, at the end of the day, think about how blessed and fortunate we are to be in this country. It's not perfect. There's lots of issues, but this is a great place, and Tucson, Arizona is too. Let's go do everything we can to make it be as strong as possible. All right? Bear down.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.